This video is going to cover importing EAUFs and some analysis of the plan ahead of the control meetings. Once you've gathered all the EAUFs that you're going to get from the team, you're ready to start the import process. The way to do this here is just click on Import EAUF, but before you do that, I just want to make sure that you've set the interim baseline for the project. So again, go to Tracking, Set Baseline, Set Interim Plan, Start for, Finish for is where you're copying those values to, and click OK. This is going to give you a very clear indication of what's changed from one cycle to the next, and I'll show you how that works in just a bit. So let's now import the EAUF that we've received. Right now the only EAUF that's been returned is for the key milestones. And oh look, Jane has returned an EAUF too, so let's import that as well. So I'm going to open this. These are the 3 activity updates that are going to get imported, and there's no red flags there, no notes. So I'll import those. Yes, I want to import these 3. That happens very quickly, no issues or comments. A lot of times when the team puts notes on the activities, this is the report that shows those notes against the activity. So you see a task number, description, and then the note. It's always a good idea to read this thoroughly and take any appropriate action. I always save a copy, print and save a copy of that in the archive folder for that week. So there's no notes this week, so I'm just going to close that out. You can see here that some of those dates have moved and the data date has incremented for the project plan. So now I'm ready to do the calculate. When I calculate here, I'm expecting that the data date will have changed, and sure enough it has. It's incremented a week. So previously it was the 21st, now it's moved to the 28th. I do the calculate based on that, and I do want to see the logical validation report afterwards. So the logic report doesn't show anything. Sometimes you're going to see out of sequence errors here. So for example, if Jane and Joe have a task that has some connection to it and they're presenting contradictory information, that's going to show up here. So you might get a message that task A has started before task B is complete. And so in that case you need to follow up and check with both of them as to if the relationship has changed between the work, or if maybe they presented incorrect information, or if any replanning is needed. It's easier to check ahead of the control meeting rather than to discuss those matters on the call, unless you think it's a material issue that warrants discussion from the rest of the group as well. So now that we've imported the information, we've calculated the project plan, that's pretty much what it looks like. Let me just take a few seconds here to make some comments about if you make changes to the project plan between issuing and receiving back the EAUFs, the new version of the PSI toolkit actually takes the information obtained in the EAUF and overwrites the project plan unless there's a conflict. So and in that case you'll get an error message or you will get a message rather on the import form. So the dialog box will say, you know, it did not import this information because the plan has different information present. So you just need to be aware that you might get messages like that, but in general it's perfectly okay to add, change, delete, remove, reassign activities after you've sent out the EAUFs, as long as you're aware that you just need to watch that stuff closely when you do the import for any system messages that are coming through. But that's how to import those EAUFs. Obviously it went rather quick here because we've got a small project file, but on big project files sometimes that import process can take up to a half hour or an hour, and then even longer for the analysis of the plan. Let's also take a look at what that start for, finish for was used for in the analysis of the project schedule. So what I'm going to do here is drag the split out a little bit I'm going to update the table for this Gantt view. So I'm going to go to More Tables, edit this. I'm going to drop in one called Duration 4. This is already set up in the standard template, but this is how to include it here. Now I need to change the characteristics for this custom field. I'm going to rename it as Variance. Remember, this is the interim variance, so 1 week to the next. And I'm going to make this a calculated field based on a formula that I'll put in. And that formula, I'm going to call upon this function from the date time category, which is project date diff, proj date diff. So the date 1 is the comparison field. So this one's going to be finish 4. Date 2 is finish. And the calendar is, if you're using custom calendars, generally we always use the standard calendar for all tasks, and in that case you don't even need to use it or enter it, so you can just remove that altogether. So we've got proj date diff finish 4 minus the finish date, and that'll return a value of the number of days. Click OK. It says it's going to replace the existing information with calculated information. OK. OK again. And now what we need to do is drag this out a little bit further. And there we go. So what we've got now is a new look at how these dates have moved since the last import. What this shows is that the start milestone actually finished 1 day earlier than expected, and the finish milestone has finished 35 days after we were expected. I suspect that's because I didn't calculate and have the right dates in for some of these values, and so when I hit the calculate button we get new start and finish dates. So this shows how these have moved since the past update cycle, since I saved that start 4 finish 4. If I need to, I can manipulate these dates by changing that finish 4 value, but really the ones I'm most concerned with are the near-term tasks. So these tasks from Jane and Joe have been delayed by 5 days because we have to pessimistically assume if no information is received from them for that update cycle, or they're marking them as not complete, then no progress was attained. And here Jane, she was able to finish gathering the documentation for the quarterly reports ahead of schedule. However, Joe didn't do his work on confirming the requirements, and so that's going to have an adverse impact on production of the manual quarterly reports, and then we can see that that has a negative impact filling out through here. But again, these dates are slightly skewed because when I saved that interim variance I hadn't calculated, and so they were all sitting on the data date, so these numbers are a little bit larger than they would normally be. So that's quite a bit about how to import the EAUFs, and really at this point, once you've done an analysis and you have an understanding of the project schedule, and you can do some critical paths and look at calculate what that critical path looks like and do some questioning there, then you should be prepared and ready to enter into the control meeting. So this just sort of underscores the importance of getting the EAUFs back in from the entire team ahead of time.